The invitation sat on my kitchen counter for 3 weeks, cream-coloured cardstock with embossed gold lettering announcing the wedding of my daughter Emma to her fiancé James. I'd trace my fingers over the raised letters each morning while drinking my coffee, wondering if my RSVP would ever be reciprocated when my own wedding day arrived. I hadn't planned on falling in love again at 53. After 26 years with Richard, I'd convinced myself that my chance at romance had come and gone. Our divorce 4 years ago had been necessary, a life preserver thrown to a drowning woman, but the aftermath had created a wreckage I never anticipated. Not financial ruin or social ostracism, but something far more devastating: the slow, systematic alienation from my own children. Emma, now 28, and her brother Lucas, 25, had been my world. I'd built my existence around school runs, soccer practices, family dinners where I'd listened to their stories with genuine fascination. I was the mother who chaperoned field trips and baked cookies from scratch for bake sales, who kept a secret notebook of the funny things they said so I could remember them forever. Now they barely returned my calls. "Mum, you destroyed our family," Lucas had told me during our last uncomfortable lunch together 6 months ago. "Dad was never perfect, but you didn't have to leave. You chose yourself over us." What they didn't know, what I had protected them from knowing, was the emotional wasteland my marriage had become. Richard, the charming history professor beloved by students and faculty alike, reserved a different persona for the privacy of our home. Never physical violence, nothing so obvious, but years of methodical undermining, gaslighting, and emotional manipulation that had me questioning my own sanity. "Caroline, did you really wear that to the faculty dinner?" he'd ask, his voice dripping with faux concern. "Everyone noticed, but I told them you've been under stress lately." I'd worn a perfectly appropriate black dress. Or, "I never said that, Caroline. You're having one of your moments again. Maybe you should talk to Dr. Winters about adjusting your medication." I wasn't on any medication. For years, I'd internalized his narrative. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe my memory was faulty. Maybe I was the unstable one. I stayed for the children. I stayed because leaving seemed impossible, a betrayal of the life I'd built, the mother I was supposed to be. Then came what I now call my awakening. After helping Emma move into her first apartment after college, I'd stopped at a small bookstore on my way home. There, on a shelf labelled Self-Help, sat a slim volume, Invisible Abuse, Recognizing and Recovering from Emotional Manipulation. I read it in one sitting that night, tears streaming down my face as each page seemed written about my life. I filed for divorce 3 months later. Richard's response was masterful. To our children, he was the abandoned husband, blindsided and heartbroken. To friends, he was stoic and dignified in his pain. Behind closed doors, he threatened and manipulated, using the children as his most effective weapons. "They'll never believe you," he told me during mediation. "I've been their hero their entire lives. You're just the woman who walked away." He was right. Despite my attempts to explain my reasons without vilifying their father, Emma and Lucas couldn't or wouldn't see the truth. In their eyes, I had destroyed our perfect family for selfish reasons. Richard's increasingly erratic behaviour after the divorce only strengthened their allegiance to him. His drinking, his dating women half his age, his financial irresponsibility, all were explained away as responses to my betrayal. Now, as I held Emma's wedding invitation, I faced yet another crossroads. My own wedding to Michael was scheduled for the same summer, a small garden ceremony 3 weeks after Emma's. When I'd called to tell her about my engagement, hoping to share my happiness, her response had been a knife to my heart. "Dad's having a really hard time with this news, Mom. You know he never wanted the divorce." I put down my coffee cup and picked up my phone. It was time to stop waiting for permission to live my life. "Emma, it's Mom. Can we meet for lunch tomorrow? Just the 2 of us." My voice was steadier than I expected. The hesitation on the other end stretched into an uncomfortable silence. "I guess that would be okay." The Bluebird Cafe at noon. The next day I arrived 15 minutes early, a habit from motherhood that had never left me. The Bluebird was where we used to have our mother-daughter dates when Emma was in high school. A small connection I hoped she remembered. I watched her walk in, confident, beautiful, so grown up in her tailored blazer and jeans. For a moment, I saw flashes of the little girl who used to wear my high heels around the house. "You look beautiful," I said as she sat down. "Thanks." She didn't return the compliment, her eyes fixed on the menu she already knew by heart. After ordering, I took a deep breath. "Emma, I wanted to talk about your wedding. And mine." Her shoulders tensed visibly. "Mom, please don't make this complicated. You know how Dad feels about—" "This isn't about your father," I interrupted gently. "This is about us. I've respected your relationship with him, never asked you to choose sides. But I need to ask you something important. Will you and Lucas come to my wedding?" Emma's gaze finally met mine, her expression a mixture of discomfort and defiance. "Mom, Dad's really struggling with this. He says he still loves you, that Michael is just your rebound. Lucas and I think it would be really insensitive to attend, like we're celebrating you replacing Dad." The familiar guilt surfaced, that maternal instinct to put my children's feelings above my own. But I pushed it down. "Emma, I left your father 4 years ago. Michael isn't a rebound. He's the healthy relationship I never had before. Your father doesn't love me. He loves controlling me even now." "That's not true." Emma's voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. "You never saw how broken he was after you left, the way he would sit in your closet just to smell your perfume on your old clothes." I hadn't known that detail, and it sent a chill through me, not of sympathy, but recognition of the performance. Richard had always been theatrical in his displays of emotion. "Emma, there's something I've protected you and Lucas from." I reached into my purse and pulled out a worn leather journal. "This is the diary I kept during the last 5 years of my marriage. I want you to read it." She stared at the journal as if it might bite her. "I don't think—" "Just read it. If you still feel the same way afterward, I'll respect your decision about the wedding." Our food arrived, but neither of us had much appetite. We picked at our salads, making stilted conversation about her job and wedding plans. As we prepared to leave, I placed the journal in her hands. "Whatever you decide, I love you. That's never changed." 2 weeks passed with no word from Emma. I tried to focus on my own wedding preparations, grateful for Michael's unwavering support. Unlike Richard, he never made me feel guilty for my emotions or questioned my reality. The contrast was still startling sometimes, having a partner who simply believed me. "They might not come around," Michael said one evening as we addressed invitations. "And that would be painful, but it wouldn't be your fault." "I know," I said, though the knowledge did little to ease the ache. I just never imagined raising children for 20+ years only to become strangers. Then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, my doorbell rang. Emma stood there, my journal clutched in her hands, her eyes red and swollen. Without a word, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me, holding me tightly as if afraid I might disappear. "I'm so sorry," she whispered against my shoulder. "I had no idea. All this time we thought. Dad made it seem like—" I guided her inside to the couch where we sat with her head on my shoulder like when she was small. "Did he really tell you that you were imagining conversations? That you were mentally unstable?" I nodded. "For years. Eventually I believed him." "But you were always so strong, so together. How could he make you doubt yourself like that?" "That's how emotional abuse works, sweetheart. It's gradual, invisible to outsiders. Your father is an expert at making himself the victim while actually being the perpetrator." Emma wiped her eyes. "Lucas needs to read this too. He still thinks—" She trailed off. "That I abandoned your father for selfish reasons." She nodded miserably. "Dad calls us almost daily, telling us how difficult things are for him, how much he misses you. Sometimes he's been drinking when he calls. He says things about Michael, about how he's just using you for your money." I almost laughed at the irony. Richard had depended on my income as an architect throughout our marriage while maintaining complete control of our finances. Does he ever ask how you're doing? Really ask, not just as a prelude to talking about himself? Emma's silence was answer enough. Will you come to my wedding? I asked softly. She squeezed my hand. Yes, and I'll talk to Lucas. But Mom, she hesitated. Dad is threatening not to attend my wedding if you're there with Michael. He says he can't bear to see you together. And there it was, the ultimatum I'd been expecting, delivered through my children as Richard's proxy. The manipulation continuing even now, 4 years after our divorce. What do you want, Emma? Not what your father wants, not what I want. What do you want for your wedding day? Emma stared at her hands, twisting her engagement ring. I want everyone to be happy. That's not always possible, sweetheart, I said gently. Sometimes we have to choose what kind of unhappiness we can live with. She looked up, her eyes shining with tears. I want both my parents there. I want one day where we can all just pretend to be normal. My heart ached for her, for the burden Richard had placed on her shoulders. I can be civil with your father for your sake. I promise you that. Michael and I can sit far from him, but I won't come alone just to make Richard comfortable. Emma nodded slowly. I'll tell Dad he needs to accept that, or he's the one choosing not to come. I squeezed her hand, knowing what this would cost her. That's brave. And it's okay to set boundaries with him. It doesn't mean you love him less. 2 days later, Lucas appeared at my door. He stood awkwardly in my entryway, looking both older and younger than his 25 years, Emma's copy of my journal clutched in his hand. I read it, he said simply. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Dad called me last night, he continued. Told me Emma had been poisoned by you, that she's betraying him by having Michael at the wedding. And what do you think? I asked carefully. Lucas ran a hand through his dark hair, so like his father's, yet his eyes were mine. I think I've been unfair to you. For years. I thought... He swallowed hard. I thought you were the villain in this story. I gestured toward the living room and we sat, the journal between us on the coffee table. I never wanted to turn you against your father. Even now, I don't want that. But these things he did, the gaslighting, the control, the isolation, they're real. You didn't exaggerate? If anything, I minimized. There are things too painful to write down, even in a private journal. Lucas was quiet for a long moment. I remember some of it now. The way you would double-check everything, like you didn't trust your own memory. How you stopped inviting your friends over. The way Dad would talk about you when you weren't in the room, little comments that seemed like jokes but weren't really funny. Children shouldn't have to notice those things, I said. I tried to shield you both. But after you left, Dad was so devastated. He really seemed to be suffering. I'm sure part of him was, I acknowledged, but not because he missed me as a person. He missed having someone to control. Lucas, have you noticed how his problems always require you or Emma to solve them? How he never seems to get professional help despite your suggestions? Understanding dawned in his eyes. He calls me at 2 a.m. sometimes saying he can't sleep, that he's thinking about ending it all. But when I rush over, he just wants to talk about how you betrayed him. And if I try to leave, he gets angry, says I don't care about him. That's manipulation, I said softly. And it's not your responsibility to fix him. 3 weeks later, I stood in Emma's bridal suite, helping her with her veil. After much drama and several ultimatums, Richard had agreed to attend the wedding with Michael present, though he'd insisted on bringing his 27-year-old girlfriend, Amber. You look beautiful, I told Emma, blinking back tears. So do you, Mom, she replied, adjusting my mother-of-the-bride corsage. Are you ready for this? I smiled. I've faced worse than an awkward wedding reception. The ceremony was lovely, Emma radiant as James watched her walk down the aisle. Richard performed his role as father of the bride with his usual charm, though I noticed how he emphasized his little girl in his toast, as if to remind everyone of his claim on her. I kept my distance, focusing on Emma's happiness rather than Richard's theatrics. It was during the father-daughter dance that Lucas appeared at my side. "Dad's been drinking," he said quietly. "He's starting to make comments about you and Michael." I sighed. Let's just hope he keeps it together until Emma and James leave. But Richard had other plans. As the dance floor opened to everyone, he approached our table, Amber trailing behind him. "Caroline," he said, his voice carrying that familiar false warmth. "Still breaking hearts, I see. Tell me, does Michael know about your issues, your emotional instability?" Before I could respond, Lucas stood up. "Dad, that's enough. Not today." Richard looked genuinely surprised. "I'm just concerned for Caroline's well-being. Always have been." "No," Lucas said firmly. "You're trying to hurt Mom, and I'm asking you to stop." The moment hung between us, my son defending me against his father, choosing truth over comfortable fiction. Richard's face hardened as he realized he was losing control of the narrative. "This wedding's been corrupted anyway," he muttered, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "My daughter, allowing her mother to flaunt her affair." "Michael is not an affair, Dad," Emma said, suddenly beside us in her wedding gown. "Mom loves him, and he treats her with respect. Please don't ruin my wedding day." Richard stormed out, Amber hurrying after him. The incident was brief, but it marked a turning point. My children had seen their father clearly, perhaps for the first time. 3 weeks later, Emma and Lucas both attended my garden wedding to Michael. We danced under string lights as the sun set, my heart full with second chances and hard-won wisdom. "I'm sorry it took us so long to see the truth," Lucas said as he hugged me that night. "Some lessons take time to learn," I replied. "I'm just grateful we got here." Later, as Michael and I drove away toward our honeymoon, I thought about boundaries. How learning to set them had cost me dearly but ultimately saved me. How teaching my children to recognize emotional manipulation wasn't a betrayal of their father, but a gift I could finally give them. Richard would always be their father, and they would navigate that relationship in their own way. But they now understood that loving someone doesn't mean accepting mistreatment, that sometimes choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. And sometimes, it's only by drawing that line in the sand that you discover who's willing to cross it to reach you, and who was never really trying to find you at all.
Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more interesting content coming soon.